The staff that worked on the Iranian issue did not begin its work from the beginning. We based our work on deep strategic understanding that we reached last year that have been proved as very realistic and very relevant to the Israeli government's continued progress over the year. The members of the group are listed on the screen before you. Nehushtan, the former commander of the Air Force, was also involved. What has changed since last year? The most problematic issue, in my opinion, today is that despite all of the attempts to stop the Iranian nuclear program is progressing. It is becoming more powerful, more stronger, and no one has been able to stop it. It is important to remind ourselves that the Iranians have enriched uranium by 3.5%, which is enough for 6 bombs. They have enriched 20% to the degree that suffices for 1 bomb, and they are careful not to cross the red line that the Prime Minister presented in his speech at the UN. But it is what we must be aware that they will have no trouble diverting the uranium that they have deviated for fuel and restore it for military uses. For all practical purposes, the Iranians have crossed the red line that had been drawn in last fall in the UN Assembly. I would like to indicate the path. The plutonium track, I would like to draw attention to that track, although the Iranian nuclear program focuses on enriching uranium, but the work on the nuclear reactor is progressing, and according to the Iranians in 2014, it will begin to operate. It is not supervised by the Russians. It is completely under Iranian control and can be used for their nuclear program. Advanced centrifuge means that they have the ability to leave the safe area in which the Iranians currently work and expand beyond those enclosed territories. It is 5 times more powerful than the traditional the traditional centrifuges. Their ability for quick outbreaks is very concerning. We can see their progression since February last year compared with February of this year. Iran is not the only player. Another player is the United States. When I consider what the United States has said and done over the past years to stop the Iranian nuclear program, I think that the United States deserves very high scores for what it has done. The President's declaration of his commitment to prevention, and the fact that the United States has, under European pressure, has agreed to enforce sanctions that cause the Iranians to sweat for the first time. This is the first time that the sanctions actually influence Iran. Nevertheless, although I am satisfied with these steps, the Iranians do suffer from these sanctions, but they have not changed their position. The Israeli position. Last night I said that anyone who takes everything that the Prime Minister and the Minister of Defense said, Israel should have attacked last fall. In the fall, Israel changed its red line or its trigger or its reason or incentive to attack Iran, Israel changed that from 3,000 advanced centrifuges in the within the mountain in Fordow, which is the second Iranian site, to 250 kilograms of enriched uranium, which is enough for a single bomb. This changed the red line and allowed Israel not to attack. The international community, it appears that what it is most it is less interested in preventing Iran from becoming nuclear, making more effort to avoid a military attack by Israel. I want to prevent Israel from conducting military action. The Iranians receive even better and better offers, and despite the fact that they don't accept the offers that they are given, then they continue to proceed with their nuclear development, their nuclear plan. The international community has not been able to stop their program. The crisis that has created by North Korea over the past weeks and the past month are explicit threats that were never heard before to shoot nuclear weapons at the United States and at Japan. These are far beyond Iran's capabilities. They have conducted nuclear trials, and they are a direct threat against the United States. They are allowed to keep walking on the threshold. The international community has to ask itself if it is willing to live with these countries who are willing to threaten other countries with nuclear attacks. I yesterday explained what the problem with Iran, with nuclear Iran is. They could say that the Iranians can say that our strategy, the international community can say that their strategy is working. We can live with Iran. We can live with North Korea as well. Here at the Institute, we cannot say for sure what will happen in the future. Therefore, we analyzed the three possible scenarios. The most problematic scenarios during the have a higher probability of occurring during the second part of the year. The first possibility is that what was is what will be. Just as Iran has advanced over the past 10 years, 7 years ago, Iran had only one trial centrifuge has advanced to the state that it is today. As I described before, Iran will continue to progress, but cautiously. It will continue with the policy that has resulted in very good outcomes for them. They want to reach nuclear capability in the best way possibly, not necessarily as fast as possible, without crossing the red lines that the United States and the Israeli government have drawn, some more explicit and some less. Iran will not give the United States or Israel a reason to attack or increase the sanctions, and the international community will not give legitimacy to military attack unless Iran provokes such an operation. Some experts disagree over whether Ahmadinejad is calling for if he convenes his scientists tonight and says, now go take what we have and make a bomb. The question is, how long would it take? A few years ago, it would have taken 2 years. The most pessimistic expert today says 6 months. The most optimistic expert today says 6 months, and the most pessimistic ones estimate only 1 month. With their advanced centrifuges, the Iranians can quickly develop a bomb. A single bomb might not be considered nuclear capability. It might require 3 or 4 to be considered an arsenal, but they have But it is harder to identify a sneak out than a breakout, and it is not enough. There would not be enough time to initiate an international process to prevent this from happening. The concern of attack has caused the fear of attack has caused the Iranians to change their policy, and another scenario is that the threat of attack will cause the Iranians to change their policies. But the threat, an agreement does not stand alone. There are three different types of possible agreements. One is a bad agreement that suits Iranian strategy. The international community will want to reach a deal so badly that it will allow Iran to continue their program and increase the number of centrifuges, reaching 60 or 80,000 without limiting the number of centrifuges that they develop, not limiting the percentage of enriched uranium. This is deception. This is playing into the hands of the Iranians. This would allow them, beneath the red line that the UN defines, will allow them to develop nuclear capabilities that will enable them to break out in less than a month. Another deal is an acceptable deal, a good deal, in which the Iranians decide to accept the UN's decision to stop enriching uranium, to stop their program, to remove all of the material from Iran. This is not going to happen. Both of these agreements are not realistic, in my opinion. The realistic scenario, which also might not be realistic, but it's one that I can live with, is that Iran receives recognition by the international community to develop nuclear capabilities because it signs an international agreement with them. These limitations will be placed that will extend the period of time from their capabilities to developing a bomb, will extend it from the current 2 months to 2 years. This will allow them to preserve their national honor, and this will give their cover story to allow them to use their cover story as leverage to save their own honor. They can take everything all the uranium that they have enriched and used it for fuel, and none of it will be used to develop a bomb. This deal is not ideal, but it's better than the two that I discussed yesterday. One of an Iranian nuclear bomb, and the second of attacking Iran and its consequences. The third scenario is that the Iranians create a crisis. When would they create a crisis? When their strategy, which worked until today, will no longer work for them, and the sanctions that harmed the heart of the Iranian economy in 2012, when these sanctions are too painful for them, they have a very high threshold for suffering. They have saved hundreds of millions of dollars for a rainy day, which is now, in their opinion. They have the capability of surviving their sanctions, but they might realize at some point that they can't anymore, and then they might break out as North Korea did. Another option is that they will continue to provoke the world. And if you listen carefully to the Iranians, they said that they have to enrich uranium to 60% for nuclear submarines that they don't have, and other types of deception such as naval ships. The Iranians can reach the point where they cross the red lines drawn not only by Israel but also by the United States. The INSS team believes that the three players will will find it difficult to continue with the traditional strategies, and they will have to either escalate the crisis or realize that it is going in that direction, and they will have to de-escalate the Iranian nuclear crisis. Iran will have to decide if it will continue with its current behavior, or, as I explained before, will reach an agreement and break out and go full speed ahead. There are a few months until the elections, and then the Iranians will have to make a difficult decision. The United States would very much like to continue diplomacy. Diplomacy has given them great capabilities, has given them the ability not to make decisions. But if the Iranians decide to choose the strategy of breaking out or sneaking out, the Americans will have to stand behind the president's commitment or change their policies. And contradictory to what the president said, they will have to attack. The first party that will have to make a decision are the Israelis. They are not players in the negotiations that occur in different locations every time in Iraq, Turkey, or Kazakhstan. But at the current rate of Iranian development, some say that they have not yet crossed the red line that we drew, but there is no doubt that they will cross that line by the summer, and then Israel will have to decide what it will do next. Even a bad deal will create a difficult dilemma for Israel. So our main argument is that we are reaching the point where the strategies in which all parties were given time is coming to an end. It's not going to occur over the next 2 months, but I think that during the next half of the year, and certainly the last quarter of the year, and possibly even the first 2 quarters of 2014, will force the three players to reach decisions. The vice president and the president say that they are not bluffing. The prime minister says that he is not bluffing. The Iranian leader also says that he is not bluffing. If all three are not bluffing, then we are about to collide. We are on a path to collision by the end of the year, and one might call the other's bluff. I would like to end with recommendations. As I said before, the INSS does not complete an analysis without recommendations. Our recommendations to the Israeli government can be divided into two. One is explicit for the Israeli government, and the second is general recommendations for the United States. We can't define U.S. policy, but we want to plan the coordination with them. We would like the United States to change their emphasis to a certain degree. Our recommendations to the Israeli government is to preserve the military ability for attack. On the one hand, in summer of 2012, this threat became the Israelis became more prepared for attack. We want to restore a threat that is not just an idea in newspapers, not just, but it has to be a very specific, very measured threat that everyone is aware that Israel is capable of without crossing the line. We propose that to the Israeli government to remain in the same position to remain in the rear as it has in the past few months. Remaining in the rear is the proper place. If it moves to the front, the world will say, "Go ahead, you lead the attack," and we'll stay in the background. The next issue. The next issue is deep coordination with the United States. We presented that last year. Israel can attack Iran by itself. I will not add a single word about that. Israel is capable, by our estimations, it can handle the consequences of the attack. I am not one of those who think that the world will go up in fire if such an attack occurs. The Iranians do not have the capability or the motivation to do so. But Israel needs the United States during the decade after the attack, during the decade in which we have to take the maximal achievements from the attack, which will occur over the next decade, which can only be done by the international community. How can the United States put more pressure on Iran so that Iran will stop their program? We believe that the strategy of negotiations is incorrect. It plays into the hands of the Iranians, who gain time. Talking about small steps, talking about confidence-building steps, do not achieve anything. The Iranians only gain time. The method with Iran has to be big for big. What I called before an acceptable deal. We have to define a deadline, tell them to take it or leave it. And if we realize that the Iranians do not accept the proposal, then we have the legitimacy to take other steps. We cannot limit the sanctions to small steps. They expect that the sanctions will be reduced one step at a time without them paying the price. It has to be big for big. I think that the most important thing is the issue of strengthening the military option. When the Iranians sit in Tehran and listen to the Americans talking about leaving the Middle East, concluding the two wars, the desire to return home and rebuild their power at home, the United States military threat is no longer credible. In order for diplomacy to work, the military threat must be genuine, because if it is not, then sanctions are useless. The combination of the credibility of a military option and sanctions will result in the outcomes that we would like. The United States must stop talking about another war, because it's not a war. They have the capability in 1, 2, or 3 nights to take the steps to do a surgical attack. They must not conquer or invade another country. That is not something that the United States will do in the next generation. A short and focused operation can reach the desired outcome. I would like to stop here. I think that the conclusions are very clear. And I would like to let the discussants discuss what our team has presented.